Hi, and welcome to episode number 55 of Dreamers and Doers, where I interview people who follow their passion and use it to make the world better. I think that's you, Paul. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. Good to be with you.
So today with Paul, we're going to talk about 5G, and just to give a bit of background of on why I got interested in 5G. At first, I saw some posts on my wall. I was thinking, well, 5G, that's great. I'm all excited about the internet and this age we're at. And I was like, well, why these people are posting against 5G? And I looked a bit into it because it was people I was trusting. And 2 months ago, I was at the newest festival in Bali where they had some scientists talking a bit about EMFs, so that's electromagnetic fields, I think. And basically I read a bit, and what I've seen is a bit scary. And then I posted, and I saw it was a very polarizing topic. From when I said I would do a podcast on 5G, some people were like really like, oh, it's gonna kill everyone. Some people were like, oh, I think that's hippie conspiracy theory, something. So I was like, okay, I wanna inquire there because I thought it was interesting. And when I posted, a lot of people referred you as someone who had looked quite a bit into it. So I'm always interested in people's story, in people's journey. What's a bit your background, and why did you get so interested in 5G?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, Alex. And that's an interesting question. And I was just discussing that with someone yesterday. How do I get to be in this place at this point in time? And it's not chosen, but on another level it is. And it's just very interesting. So I actually have a background in horticulture and project management. That was my background. I spent 9 years in Dubai in the Middle East. I did a joint venture, created a joint venture company with the James Packer company and built it to 65 staff doing design and project management. So that was a fascinating time in that part of the world, and in relation to construction and what was happening and the people that I got to meet in that part of the world over there as well. And natural progression from, and then I've done some work in property and real estate in Australia, and always sort of like on the edge and the cusp of the fringes and the sustainable and the consciousness aspects of those sort of industries, bring integrity and consciousness to those things, and then I progressed from there into being a privacy advocate or a privacy strategist or consultant, because I knew that what was happening and what the agenda was around privacy and mass surveillance, which I'll touch on a little bit around, which is the integration of the 5G side of things. So I talked about privacy, and then that privacy led me into some of the areas around blockchain and cryptocurrency, which I still believe is an aspect of a decentralization of currency, trying to look for solutions and get away from debt-based fractional reserve banking. So that's still very much on the radar, and there's a lot of potentiality there. That the blockchain and cryptocurrency market is still in its infancy stages, and has also to a certain degree been infiltrated and manipulated as well. So, it's certainly the future of money. We were about promoting decentralized money. We don't want central bankers to get their claw and governments to get their claws into that as well, and then take that to the next level of efficiency. And then the ransom events. We ran an event last year called Block Conscious, which was bringing consciousness and well-being speakers together with blockchain and cryptocurrency. So, and then we had people come on live stream with that, including John McAfee and Roger Ver and Garrett Laporto. Garrett Laporto's from the Wayseers Manifesto, if you've seen any of his videos or books, etc. So that led into that. And then because of my, you mentioned Bali and the New Earth Festival and Sasha Stone, etc. So I did an interview, an online symposium with Sasha Stone about 5 years ago. A good friend of mine, she introduced me to Sasha Stone, and created an online symposium. It was hosted by myself and Sasha Stone, called Big Brother Out of Control, talking about what's happening with the surveillance and lack of privacy, and particularly the information that people like Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden have brought to our attention in relation to spying by the NSA, the Five Eyes Alliance, which is the Australia, New Zealand, Canada, USA, those organisations and what they're up to. And then we also had on that symposium, we had Max Egan, who's he's very well known in independent media and underground podcasts, etc. We had who else do we have on that event? We had Foster Gamble from the Thrive, created the Thrive documentary some time ago. I believe they're working on Thrive too. There was Paul Craig Roberts, who was the former economist under the Reagan administration in the US. Professor Noam Chomsky, Pippa King about surveillance in the UK, and then also Gerald Celente.
And I find really interesting because for me, what I read and the angle I had was more around health. I feel there's like this, and maybe they work together, but like to me, the thread of 5G comes from health, and you talk a lot about control and privacy. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Health is a very much. I've been working on. We've created stop5gglobal.org. And I've spent most of the last 5 months interviewing the top scientists and doctors, academics and technicians around the world, including people like Professor Ollie Johansson from Stockholm, Sweden, and people like Arthur Fristenberg and some of the leading doctors in the world. So the concerns around electromagnetic radiation are very legitimate and very real. And it's because of the fact that, and I've said to a couple of them that this is probably ask them the question, is this the asbestos of our generation? And they seem to be of the mindset that potentially that it is. Science proves that electromagnetic radiation has an impact on the cells of the body. We've got unprecedented rates of infertility that I think I can't remember the timelines exactly, that have male fertility that's dropped by 59% over a certain timeline. The increases of diseases and leukemias and tumours and that sort of thing that are increasing at a rapid rate of notch. So at a pace. So the thing is, 5G or fifth generation is really just the flag or the dial getting turned up to the next level, where that radiation, those radiation exposure levels are getting dialed up to 100 times the existing 4G levels. From
your research, the current EMFs with the Wi-Fi and 4G when you look into it, is it quite harmful? Because when I look into it, I see some people say, there's a bit of correlation, but the World Health Organization would say, well, there are a few studies that suggest, but overall it looks fine. So do you feel like it's already the case, or that it's really through 5G that it's going to create a big change?
Yeah, well, 5G takes a quantum leap in levels of exposure. And the thing is, up until this point in time, people and citizens have had a choice to be able to, a fundamental choice like smoking, whether they choose to smoke or not, and take the risks that are associated with that. So I think fundamentally, whether you're talking about, for me personally, whether you're talking about any issues, whether you're talking about electromagnetic radiation that's associated with 5G, if you're talking about whatever the matter is, vaccination, etc. As soon as people start having their rights removed and they don't actually have a voice to be subjected to that, that's when it's sort of that's when I sort of get on the bandwagon and think, something needs to sort of be interrupted here. Once people start having freedom of choices removed, it starts to be a real concern. But yes, it's it is a legitimate concern. And the evidence that the top scientists and academics and technicians and doctors and professors around the world have been saying for some time, even in relation to 4G, for example, and now 5G goes next level. So, but fundamentally, the 5G technology is weapons grade, active denial military technology that's become commercialized. So it's been fundamentally a lot of the devices and things that we have, the military industrial complex makes a lot of money out of them, and then they go, okay, well, how can we sell these technology to the public and monetize that and go from there? So fundamentally, what my background in privacy and surveillance and that sort of thing is really, as in the limited time and knowledge I have, I know that this system, the 5G technology, integrates with the Internet of Things, or IoT. And what that means is that all those devices, particularly what they call smart devices, will be connected permanently and then be able to communicate with each other. And so we're talking about, phones, we're talking about fridges, we're talking about televisions, we're talking about motor vehicles, all those things being able to communicate with each other. And but fundamentally, the health issues that are associated with that and electromagnetic radiation, etc., is really a byproduct of it. The primary driver of it is creating vastly far more efficient systems of doing business, reading small, etc., and the risks that are associated with the electromagnetic radiation, etc. That's the collateral damage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think, and maybe it's a naive question, but it's a bit the same with vaccines, it's presented as, well, it's for public health, for everyone, right? Because your decision not to vaccinate your children is going to affect public health. And here it's like, well, we want to provide internet to everyone. And I feel, and the fact that all these objects are connected, at first I'm like, oh, that's great, because, I use a lot of technology, and the fact that we can have this conversation thanks to technology, and the fact that people connect the tools could make my life way easier. And I guess you're going to say, well, that's how they present it to make it more attractive. But that's like, what makes you think that there's that wrong intention behind?
Well, not so much that it's even a wrong intention. It's just what the intention is, and the capability is, as far as surveillance is concerned. We know that it's capable of mass surveillance. And
but just to refine my question, are you more worried because you think it's a tool that could be used in the future in a way to have more surveillance, or that what I feel is like the intent in itself of this is surveillance in the first place?
Yeah, well, I got to establish one thing as well, Alex. And the first thing is that it is being used for that at the moment already.
Okay. Yeah.
So that it is being used for that already. What that fundamentally becomes is then just a far more sophisticated, highly efficient form of surveillance, so that people won't be able to, everything that everyone does will be fully monitored. And again, if people want to give away their civil liberties as well, that's their prerogative, if they want to be able to know that. But as people like Edward Snowden has said, that people that are born, into this generation now, people that are teenagers at this point in time will, and future generations, perhaps on the current timeline, will have no concept of what privacy is whatsoever.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic that I've been pondering for me too, because I build a personal brand, and I'm quite fine with the idea of not having that much privacy. But that's anyway.
Yeah, well, that's the thing as well. It's like it's knowing what you're in for, So it's like talking to people publicly about it since about 2014 about privacy, and we have the metadata laws that were rolled out in Australia, and other countries have different versions of that. But been talking publicly about that for some time. But we shouldn't be unless you're using privacy enabled devices and encryption, you should pretty much assume that all your forms of communication, whether it be telephone, phone calls, text messages, and internet browsing now is fully monitored.
Okay. And to go back to the health also, can you explain a little bit why 5G is like can be harmful? Is it the frequency of the wave that's higher? And also I understood like the number of towers we'd have around.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm the first to admit that I'm not technical. I'm not versed or
Yeah.
schooled in the science of how radiation works. All I know is that a few things, and the first and foremost is that that from what the doctors and scientists are telling me that I've interviewed. I've interviewed a lot over the last 5 months and posted them on YouTube as well, including Professor Ollie Johansson, Arthur Fristenberg, Dr. Cooper in Australia. A lot of these people are very well qualified and talking about their concerns around the impact on health and I guess the fertility levels as well. So we mentioned fertility before, particularly in male. It also can affect females. You've got to realise that this phone technology has only been around a certain period of time, but now we have a generation of children that are as young as 2 and 3 years old being handed devices to hold and play with and put in their mouth and all sorts of things, or put near their head, and it's like. Even if they're lucky enough to maintain their fertility, what the doctors and scientists are saying that's a real concern is that even if they're fortunate enough to be fertile enough to be able to reproduce, the real concern is that it can actually damage the DNA on a level. So if they're able to have children, that happens, and so potentially their children will not be able to reproduce. So that's the concern. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that also what the doctors and scientists are saying is that fundamentally that what should I say? The first thing is that there is no cure. There is no cure for radiation. So when radiation exposure levels get built up over a period of time, there's no cure for that. So that's also that's a very real concern as well. But from what the doctors are sharing is that they've got very real concerns. We want the convenience of technology, that's for sure. But there's other solutions there that are put in place, and people can be able to hardwire their internet connection and their devices, etc., rather than having all these electromagnetic field, this soup that we're bouncing around in, and there's other solutions that are available. It's completely untested. There's no tests to prove that it's safe. There's no test to prove the long-term effects. What we're asking as a movement, individually and collectively, that we're seeking a moratorium, that they stop it and they stop the rollout of this technology until some point in time that they can prove that it's safe. So you've got the devices, they're all reading each other, the printers, the fridges, the TVs, they're all interacting, creating signals. Those devices can also be not necessarily secure. Then you have the cell towers that are every kilometre apart, etc. And then what they're talking about now is rolling out the 5G technology, which is a shorter wave radiation signal. So they're going to be putting the antennas, etc., every 100 to 300 metres in the suburbs. So that means like a lot of people's houses and properties are going to be subject to that. They're going to they're going to be right outside people's bedrooms. What people haven't woken up to yet is it's going to greatly impact property values that have those towers on or near them. And that's one thing. And then the next level of development that they're promoting through some of these other companies are what they call drone technology. So that the drones will get put up into the sky, and they'll circulate, and they'll be able to run off solar power and then fly for 6 months at a time in about a 200-kilometre radius continually. So there'll be thousands of them in the sky, and they're predicting one of those particular craft will be emitting as much as 1,800 towers per device. So, and then again, that's also integrated, and the intention of that is for surveillance. But and again, the concern about the electromagnetic radiation that those devices and that hardware is putting out.
And why do you think, when you look at World Health Organization, for example, they kind of say there's not much risk associated with, at least with current EMFs, and don't look very concerned? Why do you think so?
Yeah, well, I mean, they do have some stuff. If you look at
Yeah.
websites like the World Health Organization and APANSA and that sort of thing, they do have guidelines for
Well, it's a bit
levels.
weird. It's a bit weird, actually. They say the research is not convincing that there are health effects, but they still advise not to keep your phone in your pocket, or they give a few pieces of advice.
Yeah. Well, it's like they're meant to be a educational sort of regulatory body, but it's a lot of it sort of up until this point in time has been all care and no responsibility, and particularly when you've got a lot of companies like Lloyd's of London that are unwilling to underwrite any of the insurance for these companies and the technology for any particular lawsuits for disease and illnesses that are associated with this technology. Like if, I mean, those guys will, insure anything, almost like Australians will bet on anything, like two flies crawling up the wall. Those guys will insure anything. So if they're not going to touch anything to do with electromagnetic radiation, that should be reason for us not to want to touch it either.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I was at US, there was something similar with the vaccines in the US. They passed a law that if you get a vaccine that's have adverse effect, you can't sue the pharmaceutical company that did it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe we get a bit in a philosophical discussion there, but like, the world's changing, and like a part of me is quite excited about a world where, like, okay, maybe we lose privacy, but that's just, the world as it's today is going to evolve, and maybe part of our consciousness goes to the cloud, and we can look into, so I don't know if this future where we're more connected, let's say, and maybe we lose a bit of what we consider is traits of being human, but we go to a next stage of evolution. Like I can see it's like, to me, it's both a threat and also some evolution kind of. So like how, like where I understand that we should be like, okay, let's be on the safe side, and we can't force people to go through a process of evolution they don't want to go through, and they haven't chosen to. So, but isn't it what happens anyway with the evolution of life and technology? Like, what's the because I feel like this is going to happen for evolution in general.
Yeah. Well, it's all about the intention that's involved, right? So it's like, I addressed it, and I said, at the beginning of we ran a symposium a couple of months ago in Australia and had some of the top people come in person via webinar. So it's like, who are these people that are talking about stop 5G? Are they just a bunch of technophobic hypochondriacs, or like what's going on? But the thing is, there'll be a shift in consciousness. And there is already. I mean, that's the thing that we're talking about, is that, as much as we're talking about 5G, and 5G is hot at the moment, it's not necessarily what the conversation's about. The conversation is really about what do we need to be aware of that we're not aware of, and what sort of world are we in we're in the conversation for what sort of world that we want to create. Are we willing to blindly give away all our privacy and all our rights in the digital arena? See, Australia has no Bill of Rights as well, so that's an interesting aspect of it as well. So Australia's actually processing most of the data for all the Five Eyes countries in the world now as well. But it's whether we're willing to give that away. And if you read some of the other books and the other work by Patrick M. Wood, who has written a book called Technocracy Rising, saying that the devices and the technology have been deliberately placed there, and it's like, well, if it's there, why can't we have the technology and the devices that is secure, that's hardwired, that's not emitting any radiation, and this technology is available and being worked on at the moment. Why can't we have devices and that are not that are fully monitored and under surveillance? Removing any privacy. Alex, privacy should be and has forgotten to be one of the last and basic human rights. There was a point in time where I'm starting to feel old and show my age now, but there was a point in time where, privacy is fundamentally a human right, and that no one should take it away, and that there wasn't a need to take people's data because there was a presumption of innocence. Now it's just vacuum everyone's data, and then we'll just access it when we need to. And who knows where that's going to go in relation to, pre-crime and thought crime and that sort of thing as well. And, if you look at the other data that's coming out about potentially the agenda there for transhumanism as well, and people talking about neural links and direct input into the brain and that sort of thing. I mean, is that the shift in consciousness that we really want? You know what I mean? Like where we start fusing with machines. It sounds terribly exciting, but I think we should tread a little bit delicately and stick with developing some of our fundamental natural talents like intuition and that sort of thing as well, rather than having the machines do it all for us, where we think the machines are slaves for us, but we end up potentially becoming slaves for the machines in the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I listened to, I guess did you listen to David Icke on London Real?
Yes.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, and that was quite mind-boggling for me.
Yes.
But yeah, obviously, I'm definitely more thinking this is a little bit imposed, and that's a bit dangerous this way, and because it goes so fast, people don't realize. But I like to think about also, all the advantages it could bring. But that's why it's interesting, and this debate got so polarizing is because sometimes when and I guess that's what people play on, but sometimes when you talk about the dangers of 5G, people talk about technology being a good thing in general, but that doesn't justify it, right? So
technology, it's like the conversation and the debate about anything, like a knife can do.
It's the tool,
exactly, and the intention that's behind it, but there's a lot of unspoken, there's a lot of, with the existing technology that we have at the moment, we're about to go through a quantum shift probably in the next 10 years, and like whatever the intention of the agenda is. And it's a reflection of our collective unconscious as well. So it's like what we're unaware of, we're allowing. It's not like anyone's demanding to it or holding a gun to our head for us to do it. You know what I mean? But I see it already now with like some of the teens at the moment, my concerns around tech addictions that are developing. You know what I mean? Like it's not even full blown yet. It's just a tip in the water. But
and what's interesting is then when you control the information, you also control people's opinions. So for example, when I tell you I don't mind that much about privacy, of course you could be like, well, isn't that being implanted through, the process that is going on? And that's where it's, whatever.
Yeah, that's it. It's been shown already just in the early stages, in the infancy, with companies like Cambridge Analytica and that sort of thing, that were like, compromising people's data and, showing up in algorithms, and ultimately you can influence people by what people get.
You probably read maybe Yuval Noah Harari's work.
No, I haven't.
It's pretty good in Homo Deus. It's a really interesting one on how
Amadeus.
Homo Deus.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine, Will, mentioned that book to me, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Well, he explains very well how we go to a future where in the end people like companies like Facebook or Amazon or whatever can really make you make decisions thinking it's your decisions, but it's not.
That's it, right? So it's like that's a concern as well. There's a lot of that stuff that's sort of that's going on at the moment. So it's
and so what you want basically, because it's the same for me. Like people say, people who are anti 5G, anti this. What you want is to have more serious research and not having shoved like down our throats, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is super reasonable.
It's very well, it's very sophisticated, the rollout that's been happening. You know, it's been planned for 10 years and like it's getting rolled out globally at the moment. You know, it's not just happening in here and there all over the place. It's very well planned and highly sophisticated. And the fact that people don't have a choice to participate or not, and that it hasn't been tested and hasn't been proven. You know, I wouldn't say that, you know, Stop 5G is Stop 5G Global, Stop 5G groups that are all over the country in Australia and all over the world. It's not necessarily being anti-technology. It's just the fact that they have to prove. We're seeking a moratorium to have it stopped for them to be able to submit data to prove that it's safe, and that who the parties are that are liable, and also under law as well, Alex, with people like Barrister Ray Broomhall talk about the precautionary principle. So people go, oh, there's nothing wrong with it, and people like Arthur Furstenberg are saying already that people have developed illnesses and diseases and etc. from 4G systems already. What the doctors are saying fundamentally, and what they're saying in their professional opinions, is what the impact, even if you're fortunate enough not to develop any tumors, etc. What the effects on the electromagnetic radiation on the body, what it does, it limits the body's ability to be able to uptake nutrients in food. Even if you're eating well and eating organic and eating well and that sort of thing, it inhibits the body's ability to be able to absorb those nutrients, including nutrients like iron, for example. So people that are exposed to electromagnetic radiation that's associated with 5G is that they'll start developing illnesses that are related to nutrient deficiencies. And
so that's been proven in studies.
Yeah, scientifically that's been proven. There's thousands of doctors and scientists and academics all over the world that have published reports and signed petitions and all sorts of things. So yeah, that's the concern, is that it's being rolled out. It's untested. Yeah. You know, they're trying to save money because they're saying that towers are cheaper than having to run cabling, etc. But yeah, fundamentally, there's been no testing on it. So that's as I said in the beginning, that's the very real and legitimate concern that's associated with the technology. It's not about being anti it. You know, we need technology. Yeah. Technology is good to be able to communicate and keep in touch and do this, for example. But you know, let's do things the right way. Let's do things the safe way, and not have any people suffer. And I think it'll be some point in time in the future, Alex, where people will look back on this point in time, where we get to interrupt this current timeline that we're on at the moment, and they'll be like, how did you guys not figure out that people were getting leukemia and
the same as we look at cigarettes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, at one point in time they had doctors promoting, you know, smoking cigarettes. So, and then there's also the carcinogenic aspects of things like glyphosate and weed killer, Roundup, and that sort of thing that are affected. That's in the food chain now as well, and in the waterways, etc. So, hopefully, our intention is to interrupt this soon enough so that people can sit down and have a discussion about it rather than having it shoved down their throats.
Yeah, because then it's 5G, but it's also vaccine, pharmaceutical drugs, our food industry. There are a lot of things that have a similar trend where the system is so incentivized on things that are not in alignment with our health or our well-being that it just thrives. And just to specify on this, often a lot of people who are going to, let's say, give advice, they're not like evil or something. They're just like they're part of a system that have been educating them a certain way. Or it's like, for example, when Elon Musk sends satellites to have 5G, I'm sure he's very, very excited about giving the internet to everyone. It's like, or same if your doctor never asks you what you eat or if you exercise when you're sick, but only gives you drugs, is because that's what he learned, right? And he wants to help you, or she wants to help you. But,
well, that's the thing as well. So there's a lot of doctors now that are out to, you know, create associations and have people be educated about electromagnetic radiation and what's happening. There's a lot of doctors and professionals that don't have any knowledge about that, and then they end up treating the symptoms rather than what the root cause of the disease or the illness or where it's come from.
Yeah, and for me, I'm also a bit influenced, being quite into the podcast and personal growth scene. There's for example, Ben Greenfield. He's a guy doing like wellness programs for a company called Mind Valley. That's quite big when you're in the personal growth, and he advises quite a bit against EMFs. And same with a guy called Jim Quick, who has a podcast too, and is a lot about taking good care of your head, of your brain health.
Yeah.
So also, apart from trying to stop 5G, well, first concretely, how can we kind of try and stop that movement? As for governments to pause and to get more research on it.
Yeah, it's a good question, Alex. It's really multifaceted.
Where's our power?
Yeah. So, it can be in its subtlest and its simplest form, even to be able to have a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
That's it in its simplest form. And then people are taking it to different levels of commitment and following through in relation to, having conversations, having community meetings, having discussions about it, getting expert people and witnesses to come and give their professional opinions about things, seeking medical advice, writing letters to councils and to their local members of parliament, etc. And then of course you have taking legal action, and then there's class actions, and then people are out and about studying political movements as well, including there's moves afoot for Stop 5G political party being launched in Australia shortly as well. So, which is interesting because they're saying that there's other parties that have started previously, like No Dams in Australia, which became the Greens movement, started as a No Dams party. So people operating in different levels and different layers and different levels of commitment, and depending on what resonates for them and what they're out to do. But fundamentally, it's about, there's plenty of information now that we've created and that other people are putting out about their concerns, and including from people that we've interviewed as well. That like I said, that have far greater knowledge about what this is and what the potentiality is. So our driver and our education, our intention is to have people be educated and informed, and even at a basic fundamental level is to not be not be putting mobile phones near their head, not be giving their children devices or restriction of time, etc. Having hard cable, wired internet where possible. If you have wireless, make sure it's turned off when you're not using it or when you're sleeping, etc. So everything is about minimization of exposure. Yeah.
And anyway, you can kill two birds with one stone because I do programs on productivity, and part of the program is to take your phone, put it in plane mode, and put it in another room so you can do some focused work.
Yeah, that's it, Alex.
And what to do on the personal level? Let's say it's getting rolled out. It looks like it's getting rolled out anyway. What can I do personally if I want to protect myself?
Yeah, if you want to protect yourself, so first of all is like not get a 5G phone, and that you want to be able to minimize any of your there's air gap devices for headsets, etc. Moving away from putting any devices near your body, minimizing that as much as possible. Not sleeping with any devices. I know people have been using sleeping apps and that sort of thing with their phones. Minimizing that. Like we said before, getting rid of any of the Wi-Fi stuff, minimizing that as much as possible. Make sure you're sleeping as far away as possible from any of those devices, etc. And even fundamentally from a mental level, having a tech detox regularly as well, just to get away from all that, and get back to what's important. Just sit down and start having conversations with people and getting out in nature and getting grounded and
Mm.
Yeah, doing all those things.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this and spreading your message and all your energy, because I
Yeah,
think that's important. Whether people, whatever people think and where they are in anywhere, I guess the only thing we can tell people is to educate themselves, because I hear so many people saying, "Oh, it's I think it's bullshit or whatever," but they haven't
yeah.
educated themselves at all, right? So
Yeah, I got it. Well, either that or like, some people will be lucky, like, people say, we know now that smoking causes cancer and kills you as well. But, I had an auntie that smoked, and she smoked up until the late 80s. You know what I mean? So some people are just lucky in that regard. You know what I mean? But we know that for the masses, it's otherwise. But thank you for people like yourself, Alex, to getting to contribute and like giving us a platform to be able to have this conversation and, talk about these things that normally, So
well, I think it's important, because I think we're at a point in history where you can go very fast, whether creating heaven on earth or creating a scenario where we don't have any freedom anymore. So it can go very fast in that way. So I think
and that's what I was saying. Like it's not about being anti 5G or anti technology. The 5G is a catalyst for the conversation to create the conversation about what's possible and why isn't it possible to have it all. Why can't we have the convenience of technology and have it be safe simultaneously?
I have a last question for you, which is what I ask people who come on this podcast. Is obviously we've probably covered it quite a bit, but what do you want your impact in the world to be?
I want my impact in the world to be people to be engaged in conversation for what's possible, and not and like not necessarily about the way it looks like it's probably going to end up, and to get to contribute to the people that are out there to make a difference. To like, some people are being the metaphorical, canary in the mine cage and shouting out about things on different levels. There's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. There's more people more awake than ever before. There's younger people that are like out there going for it and being entrepreneurs and running multiple businesses and promoting health and well-being and, abundance in different areas. So it's like, it's an exciting time, but we just got to make sure we keep checking in with ourselves about what the intention is and like, what are we giving up? And then like, why do we have to give up something at the expense of others? Why can't it work for all? And why can't we have it all?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. How can people follow you or read more about your work?
Yeah, so we've got our website. We have our website is stop5gglobal.org. And we also have a Facebook group. It's got about 5,000 people in for Stop 5G Global. And I'm just about to be featured in, I was one of 40 speakers. Josh DeSole, who did the documentary a few years ago called Take Your Power Back. He's put together this documentary with 40 speakers, and that gets launched on the 26th of August, which is coming up shortly. I'll give you the link as well for that, Alex, if you can post that for the viewers to click on and register for that free event. So there's going to be a lot of people speaking on that, including Barrister Ray Broomhall and Max Egan from Australia. There's about 40 speakers from all over the world, including myself. I'm going to be talking a bit more about the surveillance stuff. And including, I believe it's being opened in the foreword is by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So I think that's going to take the next level of conversation up globally for the world.
Thanks. Yeah, that's. I have a last one actually.
Okay.
What do you think about, because in the spiritual community, there's a lot about, you create your world with where you put your attention. And as a rational being, I'm like, well, yeah, but if there's things happening in the world, you want to kind of, stop it or be more careful. But sometimes you're like, well, instead of looking what's going wrong and fighting against that, just create, just focus on who you want to be and who you want to create with. And like almost like I was thinking when I talk about these things, am I raising awareness, which I think is a good thing, or am I also in a way fueling that reality.
Yeah.
When do you think, in general, I tend more to, like, I don't watch the news, or like I tend to really focus more on what I want the world to be, and I live in that world, to be fair, here in Bali or in other places. How much do you feel there can be a risk on focusing on something you don't want?
Yeah.
Which by law of attraction can be risky.
Yeah, I've got it. It's a good question, and it's a valid question as well, and it's something that I've pondered as well. It's like I've sort of gone right into the schism sometimes of like what this is about, and sometimes I get afraid that I sort of go far in that I can't get out sometimes. But I've got a good community around me, people that sort of keep me grounded, you know what I mean? So I won't be doing this forever. I'll just be on this timeline until it's interrupted and we've reached a tipping point. But you're right with what you're saying. We don't want to be giving this any more attention than what it needs to be. But the thing is, enough people, we're looking for the 100th monkey. We're looking for enough people to wake up about it. And once we've reached that point, we won't be giving any more attention than it deserves. But we're all going through different levels of consciousness, individually and collectively. And I said to people, look, if someone's just about to step out in the car, you're going to stop them. You're going to tell them to stop. You're going to tell them to stop in a hurry. Yeah. And whatever it takes to have that be stopped, let's just like take some time out, have a cup of tea and have a talk about it, Alex. And then, like I said in the beginning, have a conversation about like what the world is that we're about to create for all of us, and not at the expense of our privacy, and not expense of surveillance, and not at the expense of other people that don't have any awareness about what it is, what electromagnetic radiation is.
Thanks. And yeah, of course, we're always open to, I asked people to send me studies that were quite good evidence that it was not kind of bad, but it was quite hard to find. So
yeah,
I think that's important topics. Thanks so much. Anything else you want to add?
My pleasure. No, just thank you for your time. Thank you for your contribution and what you do about getting the world out. If it gets to make a difference to one person in the world, that's totally worth it.
Yeah, I love that. I always say, when you do, whether you write a post or you do a podcast, or people can get caught in the numbers and wanting to have 1 million views. But, if there's like one person that gets a lot out of it, I think it's already a success.
That's it. Absolutely.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for listening. Alex. Also,
my pleasure. The pleasure's all mine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To the people who listen. Bye.
Thank you.